Could go with it. Well, well, well. Who's heard this story before? What's it about? What's it about?
Jesus.
Jesus and
And the woman at the well.
an unconditional love and water, living water. What's the woman's name?
The woman at the well.
What's the name of the woman here at the well? No, well, she might be a good Samaritan. We don't know. Who was the person we read about last week in the scripture? The one who didn't know what it meant to be born from above. Who was that? Nicodemus. It was Nicodemus, a religious leader. So he got named. And then we come to the Samaritan folk, and they're outsiders, right? And a woman. And that was big in the first century. And she's not named. So it's really important to kind of get that. Because what the whole passage is going to focus on is not what most preachers who are not in the United Church of Christ are preaching about today. A lot of preachers are preaching about that sentence that says, yes, you're right in saying you have no husband. You have no husband now, you've had 5, but you have not one now. And so they're preaching about that. And they're missing the whole boat. Because that makes it sound like that this passage is about morality or immorality, about condemnation and judgment. What do we know about this woman who has no husband but was married 5 times?
She was different.
Mm-hmm. Part of what happens is when people aren't named and their whole story isn't told, their stories get left in the margins. The rabbis call that mishresh. It's the white space where nothing is written, where no letters appear. That's where their stories are. So what is this woman's story? Are we assuming that her story is she's some immoral person that was married 5 times and the man she's living with now is not her husband? That's kind of what some people take this as. What we know about the context in which women lived in the first century and before and after is that if their husbands died and the couple was childless, the next brother in the family was to take the woman in and to have children, or at least a child by her, so that the brother who died, the woman's husband, had an heir, a namesake, or something. Okay? It's called the law of Levi, or the Levirate law. And so in that law, that's what was supposed to happen. So there could have been 4 other brothers that took the woman in. And here's the deal. Maybe this is the 5th brother. We don't know. But what we do know is in that law, the person, the woman who was taken in, was not necessarily considered a wife of the man, the brother who took her in. So it's quite possible that if we knew what this woman's story was, we would find out she was a widow who had been taken in by 4 or 5 brothers of her husband, and under the law they were not considered her husband. So there's not really any judgment here. There's just revelation from Jesus about identity. Identity. What do we know about the people who lived in Samaria and their relationship with the Jews?
They didn't get along.
They didn't get along. Not at all. They were considered outsiders. And so when the Messiah comes to speak to the people of Israel, to be the Messiah, to be Emmanuel, God with us, it wasn't in the minds of the Jewish folks supposed to include anybody but them. Right? It's all about us. Not about anybody else. It's all about us. But what does Jesus do? He breaks boundaries here in this scripture. And not only does he reach out to a person of Samaria, he reaches out to a woman. Interestingly, she has no name. Now, what I'm thinking is, if Jesus had written this story, she would have had a name. But somebody else wrote the story. So we don't know her name. What we do know is that he took a situation that was a situation of exclusion and made it a time of inclusion, so that people felt welcome, the woman felt welcome into what he was doing. So here we are in Lent. We're now into this scripture, and we know that the time of Lent is a time of invitation for us to draw closer to God. Have we been working on that piece? Don't all speak at once. Silence reigns.
I think everybody's story is a very interesting story.
Didn't ask that. Have you been working on drawing closer to God? That's the question.
Absolutely.
Okay, there's the answer.
Thank you, Mary.
Have we been working on that? Have we been thinking about it at all? You know? Maybe not. Maybe we're so close to God, it's just second nature, and we don't even have to worry about that. Because every conversation we have includes the one who created us in God's own image. But it's just kind of a time when God is very intentional, and the stories are very intentional about, come to me, don't feel excluded, don't feel you're not included in my family, you are. I want to help you understand what it is you need to understand. Okay? And I want you to know, when you fall down, it's my hand that's there to raise you up. I want you to know that when you feel lost, it's my arms you come home to. I want you to know when you hear harsh words from other persons, you will never hear anything but compassion from me. And I'll tell you right now, if you were in some of the other churches up and down this road, you wouldn't be hearing this sermon today. But that's what we believe. Because God is always speaking to us from God's wealth and well of compassion. So here we are with the unnamed woman at the well of living water. What is the living water deal? We keep getting these kind of enigmatic phrases that come up. Last week it was being born from above. What does that mean? I can't go back in my mother and come back out. Right, Nicodemus? You got that part right. You missed the rest of the story, but you got that part right. So what's this living water deal about? If you knew who I was, you would ask me for the water I have. This water that you will never be thirsty. And you will have eternal life. Okay? And all we have to do is ask for it. We don't do that sometimes. Sometimes we don't think to ask for what we need. But that's what God's there for. So, well, number one. Well, who have we here? Who is this woman? What does she have to tell us? Is she one of us?
She was not, but she is.
Michelle?
She was not, but she is.
She was not, but she is.
She was not one of
the disciples.
One of the Jews or one of the
She's
disciples.
not a Jew.
She was an outsider, but Jesus didn't see outsiders.
Right. Jesus doesn't see outsiders, so disciples are those people who listen to the words and follow the call, the invitation. And so it doesn't matter that you're not a Jew. It doesn't matter that you're not male. Okay, none of that matters to Jesus. Everybody is welcome here. So my question is, how is she one of us? But my second question then is, how are we who she is? Do we imagine ourselves as outsiders, as people that God wouldn't speak to, or other people told God not to speak to us, not to welcome us, not to include us in God's family? Randy?
I seem to think that this story is about unconditional love, so that she is unnamed because she could be any one of us.
Good, Randy.
Okay. Yep. Becca?
I like to apply it to today's times with the whole immigration issue. With she's like they were both, just like you said, that the Jews and the
Right.
and how almost like one was an immigrant and one was a tribe that resided in that area at the time, and almost like uh, um, we might have a certain country and just like we see with Brexit and Muslims today.
Hmm. I have to say, you know, when I turned on the news yesterday and again this morning, one of the sadnesses in my heart was that even though the Dakota pipeline could go someplace else other than through sacred land, it's being driven through sacred land for some decision that doesn't seem to be driven by anything sacred, at least for me. So there's that piece. But yeah, I think Jesus, as we're saying, it's like we're all welcome. We're all part of who God loves, that family that God created in God's image. None of us is excluded. So my second question about well is, well, what have we here? We know who we have. What have we here? And it reminded me of, you know, I was thinking about wells. I was thinking, well, what's in our wells? And I remember reading them many, many years ago. I don't know how many people read it. Radcliffe Hall's The Well of Loneliness. It's like a 19th century, early lesbian text about how lonely it is to be a lesbian. And it's taught I actually read it in a couple of different courses when I was in graduate school. So I thought about that. Are we in wells of loneliness? Or we think we're down there and we're some little echo and nobody can hear us. We're all by ourselves. Are we in wells of tears? Are we in wells of feeling left out or left behind in a world we no longer recognize, in a culture that doesn't seem like the one we know, in a society that is changing, even in a church that's changing? Are our wells of judgment and condemnation of others, or even of ourselves? What are our hardest moments of in the week, except when we're feeling really bad about ourselves? I don't know what you all do with that. I usually kind of bark at people. Not their fault. Not their fault. Or are our wells of hope, wells of dreams, the song invited us into, wells of invitation to grow in God's love as family? It's not easy to be family, is it? It's not easy to be family. There are always those people in our families who, unlike ourselves, are never right. They're just always wrong. And you have to keep straightening them out.
Me and Cindy are always right.
You're always right. Yeah, I get that. And Joyce too? I don't know if you saw Cindy's comment, but she said the right girl was at the bowling tournament last week because someone had to come in 50 out of 50, and the right girl did.
It's bad. Very bad.
And so my third well is that Jesus invites us to be well, to be healthy spiritually, to be well with one another, to be in right relationship. I think Jesus asks us to live with Him in the present. Because if we get stuck in the past, we get stuck with all this stuff that holds us bound. Sometimes it's regret. Sometimes it's feeling that we can't forgive somebody. Sometimes it's anger. And we let that hold us bound if we stay in the past. And if we move into the future too quickly, then we're held bound by worrying about stuff. You know? We worry about this and we worry about that. We worry about all those things. Like, I worry about paying the mortgage again this month, having paid it once to one person. Now we're paying it twice to somebody else. You know, we worry about, you know, can I make happen for my kids what I want to make happen? We worry about, can I take care of my parent the way I want to take care of my parent? Or in Jackie's case, do I bring the right recipes for the next 2 weeks to cook for my granddaughters, or am I going to screw that up? But if we're in the present with God, then we're not held bound by any of that stuff, and our hands are free to be the hands that God asks them to be, to help others do what they need. I think Jesus invites us also to be well in naming other people without labeling other people. Wouldn't you much rather be Joe and Allison and Cindy and Felicia and whoever, Mama Ruth, whoever, Stephanie, whoever we are, even Al, than some label that somebody puts on us, right? The crazy pastor, you know, the progressive Christian, you know, the Tampa Pride guy always asking for money for that darn float. We don't want to be labeled. He'll be up later, don't worry. We hate it when we're labeled, and we need to get that. We need to hate labeling other people too. And it's so easy to do, because that's where our minds take us. But our spirit needs to take us someplace else, and I think that's what we're being called to do, to name people rather than to label people. We're being invited to drink the living water. We're being invited to drink the water from which our thirst will be quenched. So much of what we drink doesn't quench our thirst. And if you're eating in a Mexican restaurant and that really hot stuff, or an Indian restaurant and that really hot curry, even drinking water is not going to help. But the living water, that which really, really quenches our thirst, the food that gives us life, the bread of life. Okay? Trust me, I've eaten a lot of food in life, you can tell by the size of me, and none of it gives me life the way spending time with God gives me life. None of it. So I think, in addition to being called and invited to drink the living water, we're also called and invited to be the living water for somebody else. To be what it is that God gives us for someone else, whatever that is. Peter put on our sign last week, be the light. Okay? So it was daylight savings time. I thought it was cute, but be light. And we didn't have any lights last week, as I recall. Be what it is that someone healthily needs you to be. I don't mean go get yourself in some codependent relationship, and I get yelled at by Mary for using that language. Therapists don't like you to use that language. But, you know, to be healthy. You know, if someone needs you to help them be the light, to be the word of compassion, those are all good things to be. And I think Jesus invites us to be well and to be the well. And so let that be what we leave here thinking, that we will be well and we will be the well. And I know you all are really good at that. I don't know everybody yet. Well, but I know, the ones I know, that you've been the well for so many, for so long, you know how to do it. So let us be well this day and all days, and be the well, as we are called to be, however we hear that call. We need to listen for it, and we will hear it. Amen. Amen.